Hi, I'm Flash the Delivery Guy, producer, multi-instrumentalist, engineer and all-around music person, and these are my top 5 mixing tips. Tip number 1, ask forgiveness, not permission. So, you're a creative, I'm a creative, we have a lot of ideas, some of those ideas are going to be pretty crazy. But if you always wait to get permission or to greenlight an idea before you implement it, you'll never get to do anything, because sometimes people just won't get it the first time. So just do it. Just put the snare through a guitar amp, make a reverb impulse of your bedroom or something crazy like that, and just use it. If people don't get it, fine, scratch it. But sometimes they do. Tip number 2, try different or smaller speakers, honestly. So I spent about a year now working on a pair of monitors I bought from a very common, very reputable brand. 2-way monitor, 6.5 inch cone, and I was getting nowhere. I couldn't get my mixes to sound the way I wanted to on them at all. It was causing me a lot of anxiety. I added a subwoofer, I tried to change the treatment in my room, tried different positions, couldn't get anywhere. And then a friend of mine actually gave me a lend of these very small 3-inch Genelecs, tiny things, little desktop monitors, and it was night and day. Mixing was so much easier for me on them. They had no low end, weird image, kind of a weird EQ for such a small speaker, but they just worked for me. I liked them. And that's the important thing, is to find a speaker that you like as much as it works as a monitor. So try a different speaker. Try a smaller speaker, maybe a larger speaker, one with an EQ kind of curve to it that you're not used to, and you never know. Tip number 3, the mute button exists. So in music production and music writing, we now live in a post-scarcity society. Infinite tracks, infinite layers, infinite sounds, and it builds up. And when you're trying to mix a song, more is not always better. So sometimes when you find a mix not working, I find it best to mute everything except for the absolute essentials, like maybe drums and bass and vocal, and then start unmuting things, start bringing them in one by one. And eventually you'll reach a point where just the right amount of things are in the mix to make it knock. And then you might actually get to the end of the mix and realise you forgot to unmute some stuff. And if you forgot to unmute it, it probably wasn't important to begin with. Tip number 4, fake stereo sucks. Usually. So we all know the wide, weird, fake stereo sound, whether it's a digital piano where just every note is panned slightly differently, or a synth patch that through some kind of heretical black stereoized magic is just really wide and just spreads out over the whole spectrum. But these sounds, while they sound great on their own, are usually your worst enemy when it comes to trying to make a mix. So sometimes if I'm stuck with a sound like this, I don't know where to put it, I'll just choose one side, whatever side has the most interesting information or what I'm looking for, whether it's the left or the right. I'll make it mono, I'll just take that side, and then later on, if you want to try and spread it out a bit, I'll use maybe like a small reverb, or I'll set up an aux with a microshift on it and just tickle the microshift aux just to like slightly widen it. But beginning with big stereo sounds is usually never a go. So I would usually split any crazy wide sounds and just take a mono signal from one side and go from there. Tip number 5, Brauerize, Brauerize, Brauerize. So recently in my mixing I've started doing this thing called Brauerizing, which comes from Michael Brauer, who's a very successful mix engineer. And his technique is very complicated and very in-depth, so I'm not going to get into it in such a short video, but please Google it and look up the actual thing. But bus compressing. Group your instruments into logical groups, send them to a bus and compress them lightly with a compressor that adds a certain character to them. And if you choose the right compressors for different groups, as you're mixing, you'll actually start to hear the different compressors breathe with each other slightly differently, adding like a new depth and motion to the entire mix. So please, for the actual mixing technique, please look up Brauerizing because you'll not be disappointed. But in summary, bus compress your channels. Group them together, compress them slightly on a bus, you'll not be sorry. They've been my top 5 mixing tips at the moment. There's lots more tips I'd love to talk about, but leave a comment and who knows, maybe it'll get me back. My Instagram handle is @FlashDeliveryGuy. There's lots of exciting stuff happening this summer. I can't really talk about most of it here, but go give me a follow and keep an eye out and we'll have a bit of fun. Massive thanks to CD Baby. Thank you for having me. Thank you for watching, and drink water.